I'll get the hose.
Wait. I have an idea.
And just like that,
Oh, we're rolling.
we're back.
Wow.
Hello, everybody. I'm here again today with another very special guest. I say it with everybody, but it really is very special for coming by and being a part of this. He's a good friend. He's a director. He's making it big time, following his dreams, living in Las Vegas now. Director, writer, video effects artist, mastermind behind the camera, in front of the computer. Preston Scott, ladies and gentlemen.
What up, what up?
Thanks for coming by, dude.
Yeah, of course.
You've been a pretty big inspiration for me as far as being in the creative field of film and, starting a podcast, picking up a camera, taking pictures, learning how to edit and stuff like that. I got my first taste of it actually with you about 80 feet away from where we're sitting right now. We did a little, you just had a gimbal on your iPhone and we whipped up some cool like Sonic the Hedgehog little stuff for YouTube. And
Yeah.
that was really cool.
That was a good one, yeah. Yeah, you were Sonic and Allie was Samus.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I've always admired you for, going after it.
Thank
And
you. Yeah.
You've made it big time and it's just the beginning. So it's cool to follow you.
Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing for anybody, especially like a creative, is just doing something.
Mhm.
Even if it's, on the sidewalk doing Sonic the Hedgehog or, whatever.
Hey, we were in front of a cargo container.
We were,
It
yeah.
was
We did
little
have a big
classy.
shipping container,
Mhm.
the back of a bowling alley.
Hey, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, everybody starts somewhere. Yeah, no, I mean, it's also good to see you, like, as well. Like, I mean, you're doing way more photo, video stuff now, which is super cool. But, it's nice watching everybody kind of get better and, like, elevate in there.
Yeah, it's really cool. So what are some things, first of all, how long have you been doing this movie stuff? Because, I mean, ultimately, what is your end game?
I mean, the end goal for me has always been make movies, like full, like, it's in the theater, big blockbuster, whatever. When I was a kid, when I was like really young, it was, I want to be in the movies, I want to be Spider-Man or, Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, whatever. Which I'm still down to do that, but I think the more I learned about it, the more I would rather write, direct, or shoot. Just because you have more influence on the project. Like, I would rather tell stories than just be in them, if that makes sense. Still down for either, I do like acting.
If Tom Holland calls in sick.
Yeah, or whoever. Yeah, if someone wants to hire me, I'm not going to say no. But, yeah, so that's the end goal, I think, is directing a major motion picture. But I've been working... I think I could say I've been working in the industry for about 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
But I've been shooting and editing for like over a decade.
Yeah.
Since I think middle school, my dad let me use like one of the first like camcorders that we ever had. And Travis Proctor? So me and him in middle school, we would like use our parents' digital cameras or camcorders and just make dumb YouTube videos.
Heck yeah, like WWE videos.
Yeah, the backyard brawls. We had a bunch of, we would use like toy BB guns or water guns and make like action movies or stuff like that.
So you've always been kind of on that creative aspect of like, let's give them a show.
Yeah, no, I've definitely always wanted to entertain. Because even before that, in like elementary school, when it's like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be an author illustrator, just because I really liked to read at the time. But I think it was also because I wasn't really allowed to watch like as many movies. So I kind of only knew like TV as like cartoons in the morning.
Right.
But then once I got a little bit older, you get to watch the cool movies. I was kind of like, oh no, this is cooler than books.
Yeah. Did you ever have like a family sit down where you showed your backyard movies?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You guys got to watch this. It's a masterpiece.
Yeah. No, I'm actually criminally known within like my household, like my parents and my brother, of like, oh, you got to watch this. Just 3 minutes, you know. whether it was just like on the little camcorder or eventually, YouTube or the phone or whatever.
Heck yeah.
So yeah,
I'd say that's better than the guy that whips out his acoustic guitar and is like, you guys got to listen to my new song.
Yeah, it's easier to swallow, I think, because less live reactions are expected than
Oh, you did it, honey. Good job.
Yeah, it's like, oh, there it is. Yep.
Cool. Well, from going from your parents' cameras to, better technology in your pocket than just some phones, where from when you very first had that idea, did it kind of snowball into like, oh, I think I could be onto something? Like, I understand the process, what it takes to get to where I possibly want to be. How long of just like messing around and having fun where you're like, this could be something?
I think it was early high school, just when it was kind of been playing around with the stuff, whether it's editing or shooting for, a few years. And then I took a video media class in high school where just kind of going over the basics and the principles. And it was more when, everybody's starting to think like, oh, going to be an adult soon, got to start thinking about that. And it was kind of clicking with me more of like, there's 100 movies that come out every year. Someone's got to make them. So it just kind of, to me, it always has just kind of been a no-brainer of like, oh, I'll just do that, And it was also, I think, I was at a really good age for YouTube. Like, YouTube kind of already popped off when I was younger. So that was already a little bit of a, kind of like a plan that you could see. You'd seen other people do it. Like
actually take off and
right. Like I'd always watch like Smosh skits. I don't know if you ever watched them. They did like parody songs or like funny comedy skits or like Funny or Die, stuff like that. So I think to me, I always assumed either, make a great YouTube video that gets 1 million views and then you're set for life, or like, Steven Spielberg calls you because like, hey, your YouTube video is really funny. So I think it was kind of, I just always knew that's what I was going to do. And then everything since then, every opportunity I've said yes to, even if they're bad ones, because I've definitely done a lot of that. But yeah, I think it was late high school, like senior year, where I was like, all right, I guess it's either go to film school or make a movie. And couldn't afford film school. I got accepted into UCLA and Columbia College Hollywood.
Dang.
But both of those are kind of a high price. So I told myself I was going to take a gap year and move to LA, and then I could do state residency to get a discount, which not as simple as that, but yeah.
And living there ain't cheap either.
Which is what I quickly found out because I did move there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, moved there, took a couple like small like acting jobs that didn't really do anything. I was there for like a couple months, and then I was like, okay, I have no money, so I should probably go back.
Yeah, you got a little fix too, and a little taste of the
the
whole LA life.
Yeah, and I think it was also good because it was kind of a slap in the face of like, oh yeah, that's right. There's billions of people in this world, and like it, you know what I mean? Like it's not just you go to LA and you meet like George Lucas, like. So I think it was like a good little taste of reality to kind of set me like, okay, we can get there. There just needs to be actual work done to get there.
Did you find yourself like the initial reaction of like, okay, this is something I'm going to have to work a lot harder for? Or did it kind of knock you back like, fuck, this is going to be way harder than I thought? Like, because there's a bunch of pivotal moments in life where people, especially, it's like, it's great to look back on, 10 years from now, you can find yourself when you moved to LA, kind of got shot down of like, fuck, didn't expect this. And then you were like, okay, I started to work harder and now I'm here. Or you're like, damn, that was hard. And then 10 years from now, you're rewatching this on your couch, fat and eating chips off your belly. And so, I mean, I'm expecting you to obviously keep going. And
yeah. No, it was definitely, I do think, just the, oh yeah, I need to actually put work in it. Because I think I went there just assuming I would stumble into like, oh, here's a movie. Like, why don't you make it? Like,
that is a story that we've heard before.
Right. So that has happened for sure. And I think I was just missing a few pieces to fall into that. And it was just good to know it's like, okay, so I need to either build a resume, do more of my own work, or meet different people. Like it's not what you know, it's who you know, which I think applies to like all industries to a degree. But yeah, I think it was just kind of like okay, if I'm going to do that again, go to LA or go wherever, I think the biggest thing was like, I need to make money, like to make stuff, like to be able to live. Even if I'm getting paid by like to make a movie, you still got to live somewhere, you know? So to me, it was just kind of instant like, okay, I need to get a job, need to save money, and I need to be working in film on my own time, like doing my own projects. So that's what I did and started making, film skirt videos. And pretty much just my thought was everything was practice, no matter how like silly or dumb it was. And the more I made, the more I could like point at. And some of them I am still like really proud of. Like there's videos that me and Brandon made in like 2016 that are still like I still have up on the channel. I'm like, hey, that got 15,000 views.
Bunch of views on some of those.
Yeah, some of them deserve it more than others too. Because I think with YouTube it's funny, or I think any social media actually. Some of the ones you don't expect to go off really do.
Just pop off and you're like, damn it, I didn't even work that hard on this one.
Right, exactly. For me, that's always TikTok. It's like something that I think of, do it in 30 seconds, and it's like, 800,000 views.
That worked.
I guess. All right, thank you.
Heck yeah. That is nice when you get those hits, though.
It's really nice. But it just stings when you, like, because I've worked on stuff where I work on it for days, like put like 30 hours into it, and it gets like 200 views. I'm like, awesome.
Damn.
Really cool. But I mean, I still look at anything like that. Even like on YouTube, there's stuff that'll get like 17 views, and I'm like, that sucks, but I really enjoy it. I'm going to show it to 17 more people over the next year, and I'm proud of it. And, skills are learned on every project, whether it's you learn something from failure or learn something from success, there's always like something to learn.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And like you said, no matter what you do, I mean, even with this and the podcast, the first few, I was just using my desk chair and one small jinky camera, and I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, but just as long as you can make each one a little bit better, find one thing to tweak, and over time it's gonna, who knows where it's gonna go, but you just got to keep going.
Yeah, now we're here, and like this is an awesome set. Like,
thank you.
It's dope. But yeah, it's just keep elevating, even if it's like 1% at a time or 100% at a time. Like just one step is a step,
So what are some, just off the top of your head, what's like some of your favorite stuff that you've worked on personally or that you've created?
I'd say so there's a couple projects that I can't talk about because they're still under NDA.
Big time.
Yeah. But
do we have to wait for those to come out and watch them?
Yeah, well, one of them, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, but it got kind of like soft canceled. So I don't know if it'll ever be
so it's
out.
Probably really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. I mean, I can tell you off mic, but
I'd be very interested to hear about this.
Yeah. But anything I've done with Ismahawk, which is the production company I work with in
Las Vegas.
Yeah. Everything I've done with them has been really awesome. We did for Death Battle, the YouTube channel, we did a fight scene with Red Hood versus Winter Soldier.
Bar's closed. Okay.
Which I still think is one of the better things we've shot, and it was one of the longest edits I've ever worked on. We had to, the Winter Soldier from the Marvel movies, so he's got the metal arm, and on set he was just wearing like a silver shirt. So we had I had to cut out his arm in every frame of
every frame
of the whole video, and then Jeremy, our cinematographer, he 3D tracked everything and built an arm. He built a custom arm for it, and yeah, and then Danny, our VFX, our like head VFX artist, composited it into the shot.
My turn.
Shots.
That's crazy. I remember a long time ago you kind of telling me about that and how it was intense, but now that I kind of can edit a podcast and I know that much about editing, that sounds crazy.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was we actually got kind of like lucky in a way, bittersweet, but we shot it right before the lockdown of the pandemic started. I don't know if you need to bleep that. Sorry. I don't know. I know there's buzzwords.
Times.
Yeah.
I'm not big enough yet to worry about
fair,
that.
Fair. But so we actually, I think because of that, we all had a lot more free time to work on it. You know, not great, you know, the whole scenario, but for me, it was a bonus because I wasn't working.
You have to sit there like this for hours and hours and hours.
It's just click, frame, drag,
gosh.
so it made the time go by faster in a way. Yeah, so that's I think one of the ones that's the most put in so many hours of work, and then you see the result and you're like, dang, that's really cool. And everybody I've showed that video has always been like, whoa, like, you know, you worked on this, you know,
because it's like legitimate.
Yeah,
like you could see that in a superhero movie.
Right.
I mean, really it is.
It's amazing getting, because that's the thing is I feel like I went so quickly from making stuff in the backyard here in town to just like, oh, whoa, this does look like it could be in the theater. And not just solely on my own part. Like, I think that's another big thing I learned in film is like, you can't do everything by yourself. So working with a team that is like also super talented and like, or even more talented, like all putting the minds together is like crazy for the final product.
Yeah, because I see some of your Instagram stories and Snapchats and the team you're working with and the gear you guys are lugging around and the locations you guys are at for stretches at a time. It's like, it's the highest level. And I think a lot of people maybe just see these kids trying to go chase their dreams, but like there's so much that goes into it and they're so close.
Yeah, it's crazy, kind of like the peek behind the curtain of, oh, we got to do all this for like a 6-second shot. You know, you got to set up all the light, because that's the more corporate things I've worked on that just end up being like a 30-second commercial, but we spend 4 days shooting it. Yeah, and it's just like, I get it though. You know, it makes sense. Like you think of your favorite movie and like how great it looks or like how amazing the writing is, and it's like, yeah, of course that would take time. But like growing up, you just assume like, oh, we just go do it. You know, like you don't need to think about what the shot looks like. We just film it. You know. So I think that's a huge learning process that I assume anybody that grew up with film and TV would experience, I think.
Type. When you were younger, what were some of your favorite movies where you drew inspiration from, or certain directors where you loved their style? My favorite movie that I normally always, that's like the number one rounded out, I always say Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like it's really funny. It's like a nice story. Just good everything. Like it's just got a good vibe. So John Hughes directed that, and he's obviously like doesn't really miss. Like pretty much every movie he's made is some sort of critically acclaimed or like loved by everybody.
And then, I mean, this is like the most, everybody says this answer, but Star Wars was huge for me. Like watching that as a kid was just like, yo, what?
And just because it was like, to be honest, I've never seen like a full Star Wars,
Fair.
but from everything I've ever heard is, especially when you watch it when it came out, it was such a revolutionary piece of art that the world's never experienced. And that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, if you watched it in theaters in the 70s for the first time, like I can only imagine like how just taken aback you were. But even as a kid, because like I said, I didn't really watch like real movies and stuff as like a young elementary schooler. So when I first watched Star Wars as like a 8-year-old or 10-year-old, as one of the first like I think real movies I ever saw, I was just like, yo, what?
Just totally captured you for
yeah,
the whole
like
thing.
they got lightsabers, like the swords glow, they got spaceships. This is crazy. And the fact that it was all live action too, because I was so used to watching cartoons.
And then even back then, were you kind of thinking on the other side of the camera, like, how did they get this to look like that? Or like, why did they do this way? Or were you like not there developed yet, where you're just like, dang, this is so cool?
Yeah, I don't think I was there yet. I think back then it was more of like, I want to have a lightsaber fight. Like I want to drive an X-Wing, you know? So, but that came later, I think, more in like, once I started picking up a camera of like, how do they get an explosion in the frame without, killing someone?
Yeah.
Like, how do we shoot guns without hurting people? So that I think didn't really happen until I did have to kind of put like, pedal to the metal, tire to the pavement, out of rubber to the road, whatever. And that then I think just is like a snowball effect of like, now every time I see anything, I'm like, yo, how did they do that? So that it's huge in my brain now, but I think the initial awe as a kid was just like, oh, I want to be in that world, which I think is the goal as a filmmaker, is to tell a story that people want to be a part of or like want to experience. And obviously, I mean, Star Wars, like it's such a like worldwide, like generational phenomenon. So, George Lucas, I would say he's definitely not like an idol or anything, but as a kid, he was an inspiration of like, oh, he like
the mastermind.
Yeah, this guy gets it, And Star Wars is interesting too, because it's not just him, and that's I think another thing I learned as more Star Wars movies came out is like, oh, so it's not just George Lucas isn't there, he's not writing, directing, and like doing all of these things. He's doing some of them, and he's obviously credit where credit's due, but it's just cool. The more I learn about making movies, it's like, oh, that's a whole job. Like you can just do this one thing and that's your niche, which is really cool. And again, makes sense for like the team. Like you do need like hundreds of people to make a movie. Like I mean, I don't know what a Star Wars set looks like now, but I do assume it's hundreds of people every day. Yeah, a lot of people. I actually, yeah.
Do you watch everything through that lens, or are there some things or some times where you can let your mind just enjoy what you're watching, or is it always kind of like seeing it through the lens of a director, writer,
Yeah, I try not to, but I think it does kind of inherently happen. I think when a movie's really good, or I just happen to really enjoy it, it can kind of turn off for parts of it. But sometimes a lot of times it's a positive where it's like, oh, that's so cool. Like I want to do something like that. And then it kind of turns on a little bit. So I think the key to watching it in theaters kind of helps me get swept away, because it's like, okay, we're going to sit down, we're going to be quiet. It's dark. Yeah. And then like, let's just like live in this, hour and a half or, 3 hours, whatever. But I do think too, especially doing visual effects so much, my eye catches like a lot of like sloppy work. So like when there's like a bad green screen or like something 3D that's like, oh, that shouldn't, like the shadows should be on the other side of it, stuff like that. But I've gotten really good, I think, in my own head, noticing those things and then just like putting it to the side of like, I'll talk about that with my friends who do VFX later, because I don't think that needs to ruin a movie as well, because like we don't have giant spaceships or like Godzilla in real life. Like it's okay. Like I think, and I do get kind of annoyed when people like overly complain about stuff like that. It's like, hey, if you don't want to watch the movie, don't watch the movie.
It's
like,
not real
like
anyways.
If you don't like
Come on.
Godzilla, don't buy a ticket, But Yeah, I think that is an art in its own, being able to like ignore the positives or the negatives and like just experience the movie. But I think the more I think about it, the better I get.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also I never watch reviews before I see a movie, because I've noticed for me, it kind of makes me feel a type of way. Because
you start to look for what they're saying, whether it's positive or negative.
Yeah,
You're kind of waiting for that moment, and
exactly. Or I like read that review and kind of get annoyed by it, so I look for the opposite, and then it kind of just comes up with this thing where it's like, well, the review is kind of right, but I was also just kind of salty the whole time, so this isn't good.
It just takes away from the whole experience by itself.
Yeah, so I think like just trying to like keep a clear mind is like very important.
Would you ever do any reviews? Like if somebody, like, how do you feel about your opinion of giving a solid review? Because a lot of reviews just like are so wrong. It's like, we're not watching the same movie, but I mean, everybody has their own taste and stuff. But do you think you could be like objective and be like, the storyline was great, the writing was great, it was funny, the action was there, this was good, that was good?
Yeah, I don't think I would ever look to do it professionally. And I think I learned that too. I did a movie podcast with my friend in Vegas, and I think that's one of the biggest thing I learned is, even though I think I can be objective and say, this and this was good or bad, but then I do also feel the need to share, even though that I do still feel this, which I think is important for reviews to acknowledge, whether it's like, hey, this was a bad movie, but I really had fun. Or this was a great movie, but I didn't like it. Being objective about it. But I honestly don't think I would want to be professionally a part of that. I love talking about it with anybody. If we saw the same movie, like I'll talk all day about it. But I don't know. I think also just with social media and the internet, it's really easy to get kind of like gross or not. I don't know. It's just, for some reason, movie reviews are so political now, where it's like, if you love it, you're a hero, because for like one group of people, it's like, oh, thank God he liked our movie. But then if you say something bad, that same group is like, oh, go die.
I'm gonna burn you down.
Yeah, like I'm gonna send you, a bomb in the mail, or like it's just so like ridiculous that I don't really like. And like I said, I don't like to read reviews, so I feel like practice what I preach in that regard. That being said, I don't disrespect like the art of being a reviewer or something like that, because I think it is important, and I do, once I watch a movie, like to watch reviews, especially like guys on YouTube like Chris Stuckman or people I just subscribe to, whether they're like small or big, because I'm just interested what other people might have noticed or thought, especially because a lot of times I'll miss things with movies if I don't watch it a bunch of times. Like if I just see a movie in the theater once, I might miss like an Easter egg or like an underlying message or something like that. And I'm not going to pretend that like I got it all from the first viewing, But no, I guess to answer the question, I'd say no, I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, no, that'd be no fun. It would just suck all the joy out of it too, I feel like.
I think that's
the whole time you're watching it, thinking of a review instead of just watching it.
Right. What am I going to say about this?
How you felt. Yeah.
No, I think that's definitely something too. Cause I'd rather, I'd rather make my own movie and let other people talk about it, whether they love it or hate it. Whether they want me to engage in that conversation or not, I would, like I'm down to be like, okay, fair enough. I guess you didn't like that, or like, oh yeah, no, I did that on purpose. I'm glad you liked it.
So you're in Vegas now. How did you get down to Vegas, and why Vegas? How'd you find the team that you're working with?
So I actually started from a podcast. Actually, I listened to Isma Hawk had their podcast, Hawk Talk, that I think they ran that from like 2015 until about like 2019. It was in 2017. I would listen to it, and I listened to it before that, but there was one episode. I remember I was walking to work. I was walking past Jade's house, and I specifically remember them starting to be like, hey, we're looking for interns, anybody that's looking for film, whatever. And I remember stopping on the sidewalk and like opening my notes app and writing down the email they listed.
Nice.
And then like starting like an email in the notes app. And then over like the next couple of days, I kind of like workshopped like, hey, my name is Preston Scott, this and that. Here's my YouTube, whatever. And then actually once I sent it, it was a pretty quick ball roll of, I think a few days later, I got an email back from Melissa, who's one of our producers, and she set up a FaceTime interview with me, and I met with her and Danny for an interview. And they'd watched some of my YouTube videos, which I was like a little kind of like,
depending on which ones they watched.
Yeah, that could be great or could be bad. I think I also probably went and like unlisted a couple of like the recent ones because I'm like, this, the editing on this is bad, or like it's just a dumb joke or something. But yeah, the interview went really well. Kind of like clicked as much as you can over a FaceTime or Google Meet or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then pretty quickly, I think I had one more interview. At the end of that interview, they were like, hey, I'm pretty sure we're going to like go with this. And I was like, I was ecstatic. I was like, great. Like, when do you need me there? Mm-hmm. And they actually said that I could take as much time as I wanted because they really just needed me for editing. Excuse me.
And then were you able to do some of that at home too, to just like start while you're away? They can kind of see what you're doing, test the water, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I worked remotely just editing clips for their social media for like a month or two. And the whole time I had been like looking at places in Vegas, kind of like doing research on rent. And then I went to visit to meet them in person, and went really well. And I was like, hey, I think I'm going to move here. And
cool.
they're like, awesome. So moved there. And been working with them ever since.
Heck yeah. That's so cool that you just kind of stumbled upon it on your way to work. You found something to do what you want to do. There's really nothing worse than waking up and going to I don't know if you loved it or hated it, but there's nothing worse than waking up day after day after day after day for a mediocre paycheck doing something you don't love to do. Well, like you said, you were listening to a podcast of something you do love. Just like, I mean, that's really how I started. Would be at a bullshit job, but listening to something that got me through the day, something that inspired me, something that the people that I was listening to, I looked up to and really, really wanted a life like that where they could do what they want to do with their life.
Yeah.
And it's like, the only way to do it is pull over to the side of the road and work on your email and send it.
Yep.
I mean, the worst happens, they say no, and you try it again the next time, or maybe you hear something else soon, but you just got to go fucking do it, man.
Yeah. No, and I do remember being worried because like, oh, I don't even live close to Vegas, whatever, it might be an issue. But no, I'm incredibly lucky because it was like I listened to their podcast, every week, and it was very surreal to then just a couple weeks later, or I guess a couple months later, meet them in person and be like, oh, hey, like, it's just, and now like they're some of my best friends. Yeah. So that's really cool as well. And it's, very different. I don't know. I mean, it's probably really normal now to meet like via the internet, but I don't know. It's awesome, honestly. Very lucky to get to do that and that it worked out that way.
Cool, man. Well, we're going to take a quick break and we'll jump right back in.
Copy.
All right. Sorry for moving the cameras, but that one was bugging me. I didn't center it very well at all. So we're right back. We just left off with, you were saying go for it. Yeah. And it worked out.
Getting to
Vegas. How you met these people. They're kind of your best friends now, which is also really cool. There's nothing better in life than to figure out a point to get yourself where, you're happy. And like when I was younger, I've said it before, I'll say it a million times, but you always heard that if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And then I just thought that was a fairy tale. Like you're going to have a white picket fence and 2.5 kids and a dog.
Yeah.
But once you can get that taste of, I wouldn't really call it success necessarily, but just like the possibility to do what you love. And it's going to take time. You're not ever just going to be handed, the perfect James Cameron movie to go work on, or a million views on your first video. But you start with 10, and then next week you get 20. It's like, dude, I just doubled up. I got 100 subs now. Like,
Yep.
it's crazy. The little wins can take you so far when it's like so valuable. I could be working a bullshit job and get a 20% raise, which is really cool, but it's like, my life still sucks.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Well, yeah, because if it's not what you want to do, then it's like, because I've always said that too, and definitely sometimes to a fault, where it's like, just because it's more money doesn't mean I'm going to be happier.
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously there's probably a threshold where that will change. If someone's like, hey, work this ass job for 10 years and you'll make $1 billion, and it's like, maybe we can talk.
Enough money, yeah.
Maybe we can talk. But like, yeah, if it's like, I don't know, like, I do think the money can't buy happiness is a little bit of a lie to a degree, but it's like a marginal thing where it's like an extra 10 grand a year isn't going to like make me feel better about myself if I'm just like, working in like a line on a factory, which, not to talk like bad about any job, because that job might be someone's favorite thing to do.
Right.
But we just all want different things.
Yeah.
And it is crazy. Like, it is a little mind-blowing when you do work those jobs where you're like, oh, like, I really, like, I want to be here,
And I'm getting paid
and
for
you're
this?
getting paid. Yeah, and I can, like, pay rent this month,
Yeah, somebody asked me for to do a photo shoot in the gym in a couple of weeks, and he was like, I work out at 5 a.m. Is that going to be okay? And I'm like, dude, if this is work, I'll be there at 3 a.m. if you want. I just like this. I'm excited to be here. Hell yeah, 5 is fine.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I remember saying that to him, and I was like, I don't want him to like devalue my work for him because saying it's so easy and so fun, but like I love it. But so hell yeah, I'm going to be there at 5 a.m.
Right.
So like it's weird.
Yeah, and that is, I think specifically for us and people like in creative industries that aren't salaried, that is kind of a weird position that I'm in as well, where it's like I would do a lot of this stuff for free just because it's so fun, but like it is a job, and it is like you said, like you never work a day in your life if you love it. So it is like that weird thing where it's like, oh yeah, like no, this isn't yeah, don't devalue this because I want to do it, but like this is the goal is to do this, whether it's $1 or 1,000, it's like, this is amazing type of thing.
So we were off camera, we were talking about like all the gear and what it takes to actually make this stuff happen. Tell me a little bit about like your kit and what you prefer to shoot with. I just want to know personally, sorry if this is a little too much behind, backyard baseball for you guys.
Baseball.
Or inside baseball, not Pablo Sanchez backyard baseball. Shout out, Pablo.
No, it's a great time.
But yeah, I'm curious what you're going for right now. If there's something you have your eyes on to go buy for yourself, or,
So I actually just bought a new camera a couple months ago, the FX30, Sony FX30.
Is that the one that you sent me a few months back of like, this is what I got my eyes on?
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So I had been thinking about it because Sony just put out a bunch of new cameras in the past like year and a half, the FX9, FX6, FX3, and FX30. And every time one of them comes out a little bit after, I'm like, oh, I should get that. But the 30 was like the best price point, and it works the best for what I do because I don't need like the bit. Like the FX9 is just a little too big for the jobs where I'm shooting it. But I normally run with the FX30, and then I have a couple aperture lights. Like the 200X is kind of the workhorse for everything. But also on a lot of shoots that I do, when I'm shooting them, I'll end up borrowing gear or renting gear from people just because I have had that taste of like bigger production. So it kind of hurts to be like, oh,
downgrading a little bit.
Yeah, I don't have an HSI light or, like a hazer or something like that. But I think like my ideal kit at the end of the day is just a camera, a light that I can control the intensity, whatever that is, like the intensity and color temperature, and ideally some sort of flag to like block light or like cut shadows. That's more of a want, but like if I had to tie it down to like the smallest, like this is what I need, I think it'd be like those three things.
Cool. I've never thought of that big flag to block light and shadows. That you can't control.
Yeah, it comes in really handy, especially like for outdoor stuff, like if it's daylight. Or so the flags, we call them flags or floppies. It's just like a black duvetine cover. But then you also have ones like silk that are like semi-transparent. Or like I have a homemade one because they're really expensive. So I made a homemade one from Home Depot that's just like a shower curtain.
Like, yeah.
But you hold that over someone's face that's in the daylight, it kind of cuts the light down and softens it, so you don't get that like super hard shadows, which in Vegas, which is always sunny even when it's cold, you do need, because like we don't really, I mean, we get cloudy days, I guess, but very often it is very bright.
That's genius. I've never even thought of that.
Yeah, and then like on bigger sets we'll have like a 12-foot by 12-foot silk that we put up on big combo stands, so it'll cover like 4 or 5 people in the scene.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've thought about it before, but give me like your pitch on your perfect movie or something that you've dreamed of creating that you want your name on. What's like, what type of movie, maybe, if you have any ideas of who you would want in it, kind of a storyline, if that is something you've thought about, or if that's something you don't want to give away for other people to buy up, because I'm sure it's going to be genius.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'll give away like a whole plot, but I guess, I mean, I think about a lot of different ones, because I think a really important thing, like the classic phrase, art imitates life, is like you have little experiences or hear about things and then like kind of weave together a story based off of like a bunch of different things rattling your head, whether that's like an old movie you watched mixed with something that happened in your life, or like a story your friend told you mixed with like a myth from like Greek mythology or something like that, like kind of tying everything together to tell a perfect story. But I think in my like perfect movie, if I could, full budget, direct, do whatever, I think, I don't know. That's pretty hard. That's pretty hard. Because I don't know, like I love like every genre of movie. So I do have like ideas for like, like an action movie or like a space sci-fi movie or like a really serious drama. But I think something that I really want to do is like a blockbuster, like just the most like tells a really clean and simple story. That's maybe just like a little bit heartwarming, like just enough to like smile while the credits roll. That has some sort of like big action, whether it's like, it's a huge fight scene, like that's the conflict is just like man versus man, or if alien invasion. Like I think something, this is like an easy answer of like, oh, just, make Jaws or like make Star Wars.
Yeah,
But yeah, without getting too into the weeds on like a plot, because I think that's one of my biggest problems is I just think of like too many ideas. So I do like my notes app just like has so many like different things. And then like I kind of forget like 3 ideas later what the last one was. So I think it just depends. And I'm trying to write more like actual full scripts or at least plot outlines. So that way, if I ever get like to the point where it's like, hey, what's your like pitch? Like I want to buy this movie, then I can actually like, slide the paper across and I don't need to.
That would be pretty cool. And like you said, just getting the reps in, getting the practice in, putting the pen to the pad. It's going to develop and write its own story down the road.
Right. And I think I used to have like a lot of ideas for movies that were as simple as main character wants this and he does all these cool things or she does all these cool things. But I think the more I learn about movies and like storytelling is that it needs to be a little bit more thought into it. Even if it just ends up being like something as like a simple movie, there still needs to be really deep thought into it. Even if no one's going to catch it, I think you do have to put that like heart and soul into it for the end product to be good, or for the actors to kind of understand the like read in between the lines, or at least or tell them like what reading in between the lines is.
Yeah. So I don't know if y'all have listened to my last podcast with Jacob Wiley, but when he was telling his story, and we only got like maybe halfway through his life story, which is already pretty crazy, but I couldn't help but think of like he could have his own movie. And what came to my mind was Sandlot, like because he was saying he grew up meeting at the basketball courts, and this basketball court was better than this basketball court down the road, and like we'll meet you, Friday night at 7. We're gonna come beat your guys' ass.
Yeah.
And like these courts battled each other, and then he went to this podunk town of middle of nowhere with some mediocre basketball team, and ended up playing in the NBA. I'm like, damn, bro, like that's a movie right there. Like,
yeah,
because he said, just couldn't help but think like that's like, and just a basketball Sandlot, because that would welcome such a like specific demographic of like these kids that this is their everyday life of like growing up in the hood, going to the blacktop. That's their safe space. That's where they thrive and live, and get out the gutters from playing basketball.
When there hasn't really been a basketball movie with like that kind of younger teenagers. It has that like a Sandlot.
I don't think so. I think there's been it's always some documentaries and high school. Coach Carter, but it's different. Yeah, he wasn't even on a team until 10th grade.
Right. So I do think it would be.
And how'd he get there? How'd they get to being with Coach Carter?
Right. Yeah. Because I think Coach Carter is like the only one I can think of that's like young high school. But the Sandlot's different. Like it's almost more
and like High School Musical. Not quite the same thing.
I mean, arguably one of the best basketball movies of all time.
Very true. It's up there, man.
I'm a big High School Musical fan. He said he moved to Newport. Was that one?
Yeah, Newport.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot, like, there's too many, like, stories like that where there should be more movies about true events, which I do think that's another thing, is I think there's a lot of movies that start as that, but then you just add so much to it, you can't call it based on true events anymore.
Hollywoodized.
Right, it gets Hollywood, or whoever's making it kind of combines multiple stories. Because maybe it's super interesting for the first half, but there's not payoff until like 40 years later, but we need it to happen like in the 2 hours,
Right.
But yeah, no, I do think it's cool too, because there are like, it is crazy how many people you meet where you're like, oh, your life could be a movie.
That's crazy.
Or even just like this one section, like this 5-year time span could be a movie. But yeah, that'd be, no.
Yeah, so if somebody needs a new writer, what's up?
Hit me up, yeah.
Preston, pitch it.
Let's go.
There's the idea.
Yeah.
That's probably the worst thing. I bet you'll get so many people down the road of like, hey, I got a story idea for you. Like, let me tell you my idea.
I mean, but if that happens, like, that means I made it,
Oh,
so
yeah,
you can't be mad about that. I mean, I will, I do, like, I'll have, like, family member, like extended family members or my friends be like, oh, you should make a video or a movie about this. I'm like, maybe, like, but you gonna pay for it?
yeah, because that's gonna take a lot of time,
right? Well, it's always like, it's too, people have like these like really good ideas, but they're like Fast and the Furious level, like, it'll be this car chase and then they'll fly to space, and I'm like, yeah, that'd be awesome, I would love to make that, but I can't do that right now.
No, I think I didn't realize until pretty recently, but just how much money it takes to create a good movie. Dude,
it blows my mind. I mean, even if you you can Google it for any major movie, like, it's public information how much, like,
but like you see a number like 200 million, 400 million, and it doesn't, like,
it means nothing.
No,
like, it's just a fictional figure. Like,
now if it's talking like $55,000, like, I'm like, oh, that's a lot of, but once you get into the hundreds of millions, I'm like, yeah, might as well be a few pennies. Right, because that's like the same value to me.
Right, because it's like, well, yeah, it's Disney or it's Fox or what, like yeah, of course, because they make millions of dollars. Like, it's nothing, which, I'm sure to some companies it is nothing to them, but it is weird seeing actual breakdowns of budgets.
Yeah, and then once you get to the breakdown and like have it a little more manageable and be like, there's so many people, takes so much money, so much time to
right,
and then why it takes this much money.
Yeah,
and the skill that goes into like what you do, for example, with the video effects alone is like, yeah, it takes so much. You spent so much time studying and learning and just you need
manpower hours.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, it's weird too, because I think, and I'm sure a lot of people think this, because I used to think that the money was mostly just like going to the actors because it's like, oh yeah, you know, Brad Pitt's famous, so he makes, you know, however many millions a year like per movie or whatever. So you see, you know, this movie cost 50 million, so you're like, oh yeah, like most of that probably went to Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie or whatever. But it's actually, and even though that is true that like they are well paid, it's still like there's millions spent on locations or on equipment. And that's another thing. So many movies, even like big, you know, Hollywood movies, still rent gear. Like they don't
Really?
own, yeah, because some gear is like specialized or specific, or it's not actually cost effective to own, because the technology is always like growing and changing.
What are some pieces of gear that they might be renting?
I mean, just the cameras. Like, because I mean, the camera technology is changing so fast now with digital, and because different cinematographers might want to shoot on things that they, you know, I only shoot on Arri or I only shoot on Sony or what have you. And sometimes renting it means renting it from the director of photography or from like, you know, a connection, or, you know, Disney might own a rental house, so they get a deal on it or something. But yeah, lights, cameras, walkie-talkies, like the most basic stuff. It's
Really?
Yeah, it's
They
pretty
wouldn't
interesting.
Just go buy a set of walkie-talkies?
You would think, but I guess that's just always how it's gone. And I think it also comes from a place of like every production starts small. So whether it's like an indie movie that only has $100,000 to make a thing and then try to pitch it to Fox or pitch it to Netflix or whatever, they need to use as much of that $100,000 on as many resources as possible. And you can't buy, you know, $120,000 camera with your whole budget. So you pay, you know, probably $30,000 to use it, to rent it for like 3 weeks, you know. It's interesting. Lenses are big too, for rentals. Obviously there's plenty of people out there that own nice and expensive lenses that they shoot with all the time, but it's a very big market to rent lenses. And I've just recently kind of like started doing that myself, like to try out new, because I used to think that you have to buy you just got to save up and wait forever and buy your own lens, but you can actually, not sponsored, but lensrentals.com is like super cool. They just like ship it to you. And I don't know if the prices are good just because I don't know enough about like the market of that, but you can get some really cool lenses for only like, you know, 50 to like a couple $100 for a week.
That's not bad at all.
Yeah, and if especially if it's like a special, because I got one. It's called the tilt shift lens. It's it goes up and down on the focal point, but it also like turns because there's like extra glass with prisms and like mirrors inside of it. Just creates a different look of perspective. But it was, I think, $100 for 7 days.
Did you like it? Did you like the outcome?
Yeah, it was cool. I used it specifically. They used to use it a lot in the 50s and 60s to make model size stuff look regular size. So I bought a model car and then had a guy stand 20 feet away and put the car right in front of the lens. Nice. So it looked like they were the same size and they were both in focus.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it was really cool and it worked. But I'm not going to do that many times, so it would be a waste for me to buy that lens, because I think it's like $3,000 or something just to buy the lens outright. So yeah, that's something that's cool, and I mean a huge plus for the age of the internet of being able to like, I just like found it, and in 5 minutes it was a couple
days. Yeah,
it was like 2 day shipping. So, but yeah, but back to the budgets, it is pretty ridiculous, especially on the small scale of seeing productions that are only like, you know, 50 or a couple $100,000, which is like not small, but unfortunately in film that is pretty small. Because in Hollywood, what's considered low budget is $1 million.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you're under that, you're zero budget.
That's crazy to be spending $1 million and just be labeled low budget. It's like, hey, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a life-changing amount of money. But yeah, it's funny. So people like producers, if they buy a movie that costs less than $1 million to make, they will call it a zero budget movie. Zero.
Wow.
Could be 900,000. They must be
dealing with a lot of money to just have that perspective of like, no, basically zero.
Yeah. I think it's because like the threshold for, you know, Hollywood, you're normally spending at least $20 million or give or take. I don't know if that number's accurate, but I do know the 1 million is lowest, which is so stupid to me.
It's
like
crazy.
it's honestly a little infuriating. Like it's kind of like
Oh,
really
yeah.
we're the, like
Especially when you're in your position and you have $0 budget and you have to work your way up to that, and even $1 million is still so minuscule to them. It's like, you guys, you got to make me feel like there's some hope.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's one of those things that I hope can change, like as more people come up and like people that aren't just nepotism Hollywood take over Hollywood, where it's like, no, we just want everybody to make movies and tell stories. It's not just about like only Disney gets to do this and only, Warner Brothers gets to do that.
So for like movies, 10, 15 years ago, like Step Brothers pops into mind. Good Guys, funny comedies that we grew up on watching over and over. And if it's ever on TV, I'm going to put it on again. And where it's like kind of risque, a little bit of like, edgy jokes, but it's funny. And obviously the point of it is to make you laugh, not to like show any bad intentions. But with, today's climate and all this bullshit going around with like people not able to see why you're saying something and only hear maybe these words or something like that. Have you noticed a difference in your personal line of work of like these new boundaries just being thrown over people and thrown over these ideas and shut down, and you can't say this and you can't have somebody look like that, and you need diversity even though if it's it's not a good fit? Has that been something at the level where you're at where it's like, like, get off my back, let me do my thing, I wish it was back to the olden days? Is that something that you've experienced?
No, I don't think so. And I think it's just because the level where I'm at right now, I would say is like I would call myself an indie filmmaker. Like I'm not, connected to a huge studio, even though I've worked on like a Disney set and I've done stuff like that. It doesn't mean, no, I'm not like Will Ferrell or whoever. Uh-huh. But I think at this level, especially where like a lot of the projects that I shoot, whether someone hired me to do it or I'm just doing it for my own, like for the passion, a lot of times it's like, we just need to work with anybody who's down. Because a lot of the times, like, even if it is that higher budget thing, like $100,000, it's still spread so thin because we're spending most of it on gear, most of it on location. So it's kind of just whoever is the best pick that will accept this rate, Because that's another thing too. There's a lot of times I've gotten to work higher positions on set just because I'm the only person willing to like not get a full rate, which is really nice, and I'm thankful for that opportunity. And it's how people are able to grow, because it's like, hey, we can't pay you like we can only pay you 50% or something. It's like, I don't care, I will be here for free. But I think there's definitely something like what you said is going on, like on that higher level. But I do think we're almost to the point, like there was a big shift, in the past like 5 or 10 years. And I think it's swinging back. Like it's like a pendulum, because if you look at movies over the decades, every decade or like 5 to 8 years has like a tone to it, where like all of the 80s was like kind of teen comedies or like action manly, like Arnold and Stallone and stuff like that, whereas like the 90s is like kind of like dark and gritty and like a little bit sad. There's always, every genre gets a little bit of, we're never going to get a decade where like one genre dies, but there's always like a little bit more of something else and less of another. And I think the internet speeds that up. So instead of every decade, it's like every like 5 years. But I do think we kind of lost comedy a little bit, and it sucks because instead of having those like iconic like funny movies, I feel like every movie just got like a few jokes. Like even ones that were supposed to be serious, it's like, oh, like throw in like a dumb quip or something. But I do think we're going back to like kind of everything getting a fair shake as far as genre goes. And I do think streaming is helping with that, because I've actually seen a couple movies that came out this year that are like pretty funny. But I also think it's just like I was talking about the shift of genres in the decades or tones is just that audience kind of get oversaturated with things. Like, I think in 5 years, like, we're not going to be seeing a lot of superhero movies. Because, like,
Really?
just because I think we'll still be getting them. Like, there'll be 1 or 2 a year.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's some stat this, like, 2022, there was so many hours of, like, Marvel movies and TV shows. And it's like, that's too much. There's definitely, like, the bubble pops, I guess. But I think it'll be back. So maybe in, like, 15 years, there's going to be, like, 100 Marvel movies, you know,
revamp
right. So I think obviously, like, the kind of like political things aside, I do think we're like swinging back to more of that. I think especially with how like bad of like a past few years we've had like as a world, I think more people just want to be entertained and are like just happy to like enjoy things again. Because we did go through like a big doom and gloom year or two.
I'd say that's fair to say.
Yeah. Regardless of where you are and what you feel about it, like there was definitely some sad going on.
You couldn't even go to the movie theaters.
Exactly. And I think that also played a huge part in it as well, just for everything, like taking a huge break. And now everybody feeling like it needs to be some type of way. And I think because we had such a comedy renaissance for movies, at least in like the mid to late 2000s, the reason we've had a lot more like serious movies be like kind of the popular thing to watch and more of like your dramatic, like intense feeling movies is because, you know, we had all our laughs and then like the majority of audiences are like, hey, let's get serious.
Kind of counterbalance it.
Right. Well, I think it was also the millennials getting older, like, people born in the late 80s, early 90s being like, hey, we're in our 30s now and like we need to take ourselves seriously. Like Will Ferrell's not funny, you know, like that type of thing. So I think that's also just a generational shift. And movies are going to get really weird when Gen Z starts taking over.
Oh gosh, I haven't even thought about that, but you're so right. If regular life is so weird, the movies are going to be times 10.
Definitely. And I don't know what you classify yourself as, but I think technically we are Gen Z. Like we're like old Gen Z.
Unfortunately. It's so weird though, because like that's also my little sisters and my adolescence, it's like me and my parents almost. It's just completely different.
It's very different. Well, and I do think it's like the generational labels, it's too wide of a gap.
Especially like, the further we get in time, the shorter that needs to be because we're growing at such an exponential rate.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. Like I do think like all of like the baby boomers being classified as the same, it's like, okay, fair. Like there wasn't a lot of things going on in their developmental years from like 1 to 18. Whereas like, even people 3 years younger than me, it's like, where do you come from?
Whoa. That's so true. I haven't thought about that either, but they need to start minimizing that gap.
Yeah. I think, kind of an answer to your question, but kind of not. The Gen Z generation, like once the youngest Gen Z kids are in their like early 20s,
then everything's going to be free game because
movies are going to be very different. Yeah. We're going to start getting like movies that are just all like Vine memes.
Oh gosh, which might be great. Bring back Vine.
Yeah, I wouldn't be I think that's the thing too, is like I do really like diversity of genre or like tone. Like even just looking at just comedy, having your like ridiculous things that make no sense on TikTok that for some reason are funny, all the way to like just a classic joke, you know, whether that's like, you know, a knock knock joke or just like a comedy movie from the 80s where it's just kind of like dumb, simple, like fun. And having everything in between, I think is really, it's nice that I think the barrier to entry to create is lower. So, cause like TikTok's a huge thing of that is like, there are so many funny people, whether it is just like the stupid memes that make no sense or just like genuine, like you could be a stand-up, but you're just like a 16-year-old on TikTok, you know? Yeah. So yeah, I think that's cool. And yeah, the pendulum's shifting back, I think. I think we're going to get more good stuff. Like, it's only going to get better.
Cool. So what's next for Preston Scott? Is there anything you have coming up down the pipeline? Is there anything within the next, 2023 is right around the corner? Is there anything that that you see yourself getting done? Any big milestones in the near future that can get done within the next year?
Yeah. So I think, I know. So I shot a fan film in April of this last year, Red Hood Outlaws.
Arsenal. Raven. Let's finish this.
Well. Jason.
So that's going to be coming out this year. I'm hoping it's coming out like March or April. We don't have an official date because I'm just editing it. So it's kind of like at the speed that I can. So really excited for that to come out. I think that's like the best thing that I've made and been like a part of from inception. It's me and my friend Jimmy. We wrote it, we produced it. Jimmy directed it. I starred in it with Brandon. It was crazy. It's gonna make my YouTube channel look very different. Like the stark contrast between 2023 versus like 2019 or like whatever the old movies are.
Cool, man. It's gonna be awesome to see just all the time and effort you're putting into something big.
Yeah. I think the goal is to put it out before it's been a year since we filmed it, but yeah, I mean it took a long time to edit, and now it's just working on the VFX, like getting all like the superpowers and the guns and the explosions and stuff. And then hopefully, we shot a movie back in 2021. Ismahawk did, called Action. I cannot guarantee that it'll be out in the year of 2023, but it will come out.
Cool.
That one's also. It's not an Ismahawk production. We just, all of us worked on it in one way or another. So I was second assistant camera. And it's like, it was the first feature film that I worked on from on set day one to the last day. But that was a really amazing experience getting to be like an actual position as opposed to just like a production assistant or an extra or something like that. We had a car chase in the middle of downtown Las Vegas. We blew up a house, blew up a van. We did a lot of cool stuff. So I'm really excited for that. Yeah, it's that's another one too. It feels like a real movie, like the things that happen in it. But it was only a couple $100,000. Like it wasn't, this $1 million. But just back to the budget talk. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. Why don't you go ahead and pick a camera and tell them where they can find you, plug, everything you got?
Yeah. You can find me at FilmSkirt on Instagram, and my YouTube channel is called FilmSkirt as well. And I think those two are pretty much all you would need to find any of the work. And I think on my Instagram, I have the link in bio to my YouTube. So it's I try to keep the branding simple.
Oh, yeah. Well, cool, man. Thanks for coming on and giving us your time and really insightful. It was fun.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, brother. We're going to go whip up some grilled cheese and soup and go munch a little bit. All right, that's it. Deuces.
In fact, the ones I want, I always pack it up, then dash and run. My heart is in pieces, can't patch it up. I'm back to numb, the past is strong. In every single fucking rap I've sung, I've had enough. Got my heart broken by a bitch, I wrote an album about it. I lost my fucking best friend, I wrote an album about it. It's like there's power in sadness, I'd be so lost here without it. So the fuck am I gonna write about if I ever find happy? It's like 100 different ways I can say I'm depressed. You still wouldn't get it. I smoke something and drink, then I start to relive it. The memories are vivid, that's the only place you visit. Listen, I'm the king of closing doors, but never locking them. Pretending to move on, but hoping that you come in. Knocking and it's open, so you watch right and ignoring all the damage that you left. It's like a ram, it come in head first, a tiger, red face and dip. I'm tired of time, I put out these fires, it's in my head. I've said all that I can say, and I spent all that I can spend. It's tempting to give it up, but it's thanks to worry I live. I was on my way to him.